Let's come back to our motivation. Again, a feeling of deep appreciation, deep rejoicing that somehow, almost miraculously, we have this opportunity to learn and practice the Dharma, and particularly to think about monastic life. How difficult it was in many, many previous lives to create the causes, all the multiple causes, to be here for, the time that we're here. So many causes and conditions had to come together. We had to create so much good karma in the past. And so realizing that all we take with us at the time of death is the Dharma and the karma that we create. And seeing how difficult it is to have this opportunity, then let's have a firm decision to continue to create the causes for such opportunity, to have such opportunities in the future. And by having those opportunities in the future, may we, as time goes on, generate all the realizations of the path, increase our wisdom, compassion, skillful means, power, so we can most effectively benefit others by eliminating all the hindrances from our own side to being able to do that. And we do that by gaining all the spiritual realizations. So let's have that as our long-term motivation. So there's one thing that I should have mentioned at the beginning and I forgot, was that every morning when you wake up, it's a very good practice before you even get out of bed to take refuge in the three jewels, and then to set your motivation for the day. So I have three most important things in my motivation every day. One is, as much as possible, not to harm others with my body, speech, and mind. Second, as much as possible to be of benefit to them. And third, as much as possible to cultivate the bodhicitta motivation for everything I do during the day. So I think it's quite important to cultivate those motivations at the beginning of the day, and then periodically throughout the day remember them. Yeah, because it helps us stay on track for what we're doing, why we're doing it. Then at the end of the day, review your day, and how did I do? Oh, well, I got really mad at somebody. I need to do some purification about that one. But I didn't yell and scream at them like I would have done 2 years ago. So that's good. Pat myself on the back. Yeah? So to give yourself credit for your progress and also see what you need to improve upon. And then, do that and make those decisions for the next day. And it really helps you to clear up things in your life, because then you don't go to bed with any regret or anger or guilt. And it enables you to really learn from your life experience. And then every day is kind of a new day to start afresh living your motivation. So let's start with your question about the Lanaya. So like I said, I can't, the stories, they'll come up in teaching some other time. But the Vinaya, like I said, I can't really teach much of that. But what I can do is read the introduction to the Pratimoksa Sutra to you. Okay? So, this is the introduction, because the Pratimoksha is all of our precepts, but this is the introduction before we read the precepts, okay? So we all start out by saying homage to the omniscient one, which is the Buddha. And then the Pratimoksha reciter says, I bow and pay respect to all the Buddhas, Dharma, and Sangha. I will now proclaim the precepts of the Vinaya so that the correct Dharma will last forever. Okay, so you notice the motivation, so that the correct Dharma will last forever. The precepts are as limitless as the ocean, like jewels that can be sought tirelessly. To protect the sacred treasure of the Dharma, the Sangha is gathered to listen to me. To eliminate the 8 defeats, and then it goes through the categories of vows, of precepts, you are, to eliminate those, you are assembled to listen to me. Then we have the 7 previous Buddhas, Vipassana, Sikhin, Visbahu, Kadakachanda, Kanakamuni, Kashyapa, and Shakyamuni. All these world-honored ones of great virtue taught this Pratimoksa Sutra to me. I now wish to proclaim it well. All you worthy ones, listen together. So the Sangha is worthy because before we read this, we've all done our confession and purification, acknowledging our mistakes. Just as a person whose leg is injured is unable to walk, similarly those who have broken the precepts cannot be born as a deva or a human being. Those who wish to be born in the celestial world or in the human world should always protect all the precepts and not violate them in any way. Just as a coachman driving on a treacherous road is worried because the wheel bolts are gone and the axle is broken, so a person who has broken the precepts is afraid at the time of death. Just as when looking in a mirror, the beautiful are delighted while the ugly feel sad. Similarly, during the recitation of the Pratimoksha, those who keep the precepts feel happy, while violators feel sad. Just as in a combat between 2 armies, the brave advance while the cowardly retreat, similarly, during the recitation of the Pratimoksha, the pure are tranquil, while the defiled are afraid. A king is the greatest worldling, the ocean is the greatest body of water, the moon is the greatest star, and the Buddha is the greatest sage. Among all the regulations, the highest is the Pratimoksa Sutra. The Tathagata set forth these precepts that are to be recited every half month. It's interesting again, among all the regulations, the highest is the Pratimoksa Sutra. So really pointing out the importance of not only refraining from naturally negative actions, but by the Sangha being in agreement about how we live together and everybody cooperating with that, and then having a harmonious Sangha. And we've already talked about how that benefits the individual, how that benefits other people, those who have faith, those who don't have faith, and how it creates the conditions for the long endurance of the Dharma. Okay, so that might give you a little bit, Maybe at the end I can read there's a conclusion at the end of the recitation, I can read that. Then your question about the teacher. So we have different kinds of teachers. His Holiness talks about this a lot. And it really makes a lot of sense because in the Tibetan tradition, so often they'll start assuming everybody is going into Tantra and start with that. And His Holiness says that's not really so wise, we have to kind of start where we are and work our way up. So the three kinds of teachers correlate with that. One is our Vinaya teacher. That's the person who gives us refuge and the 5 precepts, who teaches us the 4 noble truths, about renunciation and, the basic fundamentals of the path. The second is the Bodhisattva teacher. So that's the person who gives us the Bodhisattva vow and teaches us how to generate bodhicitta, how to practice the 6 perfections. And then finally is the tantric master, and that's the person who gives us initiation and instructions on how to do the tantric practices. Okay? So the tantric master, that's quite advanced, and so in the Tibetan tradition, we can have more than one teacher, which I think is very helpful. I think I've talked a little bit about my experience that way when my first teacher all of a sudden, got so busy and, very, very difficult to see him, and so cultivating relationships with other teachers who have more time that I can ask more personal questions to. When you do that, you don't throw the first teacher out. That person's still your teacher, and you still go to teachings, and you still have respect and devotion and everything. But you add, more teachers who help you in different ways. In my own case, I know I started out, with Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa, and then at one point, then they actually introduced me to other teachers that became also my principal teachers, They were the ones who introduced me to Serkam Rinpoche, also to Song Rinpoche. Lama Zopa told me to go study with Geshe Nawang Dargay at the library. I don't think it was to get rid of me. I think it was because he saw that Geshe Dargay could really help me by what he was teaching, and the teachings I received there were amazing. Yeah. And so they arranged for me to meet other teachers, and then Serkam Rinpoche, was the one who steered me towards His Holiness, and so in my mind, they're all together. They're all, when at the visualization we do in the easy path of the Buddha, in front, I think this is the essence of all my teachers, because they're all guiding me in the same direction. Yeah. So I don't see any kind of contradiction. They just have different roles, And what they say when they teach the Dharma, is the same. They all talk about emptiness. No one says, the self is truly existent, If I had one teacher that said the self was truly existent and another one that said self wasn't truly existent, then I would get pretty confused. But, in terms of the Dharma, it's the same, so the teachings just complement each other. In terms of how we relate to all of our teachers, first, before we accept somebody as a teacher, that's when we do the screening. That's when we check them out. And, when I went over last week the qualities of a good Mahayana teacher, so we check somebody out. Well, after we accept somebody as one of our teachers, then we try to really have a positive view. So if you're going to pick faults, do it before you accept somebody as your teacher. Because if you accept somebody as your teacher and then your mind goes ballistic, starting to pick faults, then it becomes very difficult to practice what that person has taught you, and you wind up shooting yourself in the foot. Yeah? And by pick faults, okay, if our teacher is doing something that is blatantly unethical, they're sleeping around, they're embezzling money from the center or the monastery, they're, lying all over the place, something like that, then, you have to talk about it with the teacher, you have to bring it up and deal with it, okay? But so those are faults that need to be dealt with. But many times what we consider faults are actually different ways of doing things that we don't agree with. Okay? And they're not necessarily faults. It's just we don't like to do things that way. Okay? One of my teachers throws mows constantly to make decisions. I find that incredibly difficult. Mows are a kind of divination. I can't live my life by mows. It doesn't work for me, But it works for my teacher, and it's a free world. So he does what works for him, and I do what works for me. And I don't need to criticize, blame, get confused, or whatever. Yeah, it's just, okay, teachers have all different sorts of ways of thinking. One of my teachers thought George Bush was a great president. Yeah. All of us students are going like, what? What? But, from his viewpoint, George Bush spoke up to China regarding human rights. And he was a Tibetan refugee, and to him, that was very important. He was also an American citizen. He thought a strong response to 9/11 was good. Well, I really disagree. But he's entitled to his opinion. I'm entitled to mine. When it talks about relying on your spiritual mentor or seeing your spiritual mentor's qualities, that means Dharma qualities. I don't have to have the same political views as my spiritual mentors, And this is, I think, what's very confusing when people enter the Dharma and right away get tantric teachings and are told to see their teacher as a Buddha. Because then you start thinking, okay, this is the Buddha. He thinks George Bush was a great president. That's the Buddha telling me that. Well, now I better think George Bush is a great president. Otherwise, I'm not relying on my teacher very well. No, you can't function in the conventional world with that kind of mind. We don't go to our teachers to learn politics. Yeah, we go to our teachers to learn the Dharma. We can have different political views. Okay? One of my teachers, who I treasure so much, when I first started studying with him, he was absolutely convinced the world was flat. Because that's what Vasubandhu says in the Abbey Dharma Kosha. And one of the nuns took a globe to Geshe-la and said, Geshe-la, if you calculate the number of pakse, the Tibetan measurement, of how far below Bodh Gaya the hell realms are, because it says in the Abbey Dharma Kosha there's such and such a measurement below Bodh Gaya. She said, you come out in Los Angeles. Yeah. So, again, I didn't go to this teacher to learn cosmology. I went to learn emptiness. And his teachings on emptiness were exquisite. You couldn't get any better than that. Yeah? So then I meet some Tibetan teachers, who think women are inferior. Well, again, I didn't go to learn about, women's rights and feminism from that person. I went to learn the Bodhisattva path, so I'll learn the Bodhisattva path. They can have their opinion, I have my opinion. Yeah? And then, for me, that just gives lots of space and puts some normalcy, I don't know how to say it, but you get what I mean, into the relationship, instead of getting this mind that's like, well, he thinks women are inferior, I better think like that too, that must be true, No. And then you get really confused, your teacher's the Buddha, then you're driving in the car with your teacher, he doesn't know how to get somewhere. Then you lose faith. Oh, my teacher's the Buddha, he doesn't know how to get from here, to the office down there, so he's not omniscient. Oh my God, what am I doing following this person? you know? So you'll just get totally confused, you know. So I don't expect my teachers to be omniscient regarding, you know, kind of where the visa office is, or how to get to the grocery store, or, you know, and just, you know, in terms of the Dharma, I see my teacher as a Buddha, but I wouldn't like get in a plane with him as a pilot if he hasn't had pilot lessons, you know? So I think we have to, you know, have some normalcy and you know, like that, okay? And not getting into this kind of la-la weird way of thinking, okay? And Lama Yeshe he had such a beautiful way, you know, because you see in the Tibetan tradition all this formality and stuff. And Lama said, you know, if you think about the Lamrim, you know, what I taught you, and it helps you become a better person, and it helps your mind be more peaceful, and you come to me and say, Lama, thank you. What you taught helped me become a better person, helped me become kinder. He said, that is relying on a spiritual mentor, and he said, I don't need the mandala offerings and the brocade and the blah blah, you know? It's like, okay, you benefited from the teachings. You have a close relationship with your teacher. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, close relationship with your teacher is something that exists here. It exists totally here, you know. At the beginning, you have to be around your teacher because you need that very obvious guidance. But the Tibetan practice of Guru Yoga, I think, is so beautiful because it helps us internalize the teachings and instructions so that then when you're not with your teacher, instead of feeling like, I can't make a decision, I don't know how to think for myself, you know, you do what I call a 911. Yeah, and you do a 911 to your teacher. And you've heard enough teachings, you know, because you've been around for a while. You've followed your teacher's instructions for a while. So you've heard enough teachings, and then you remember what your teachers taught you in other circumstances, and you remember the Lamrim, and you remember the thought training, and then it's like, okay, now I know what to apply. Yeah? So, but that, you see, involves us really studying and integrating the teachings and meditating on them. Yeah. So that happens when we really take the teachings to heart and put them in here. Yeah. You know, so try and have a positive view of our teacher, and recognize a lot of the things that we don't like are actually preference. Or another way to do it is, I always tell the story of one of my Chinese friends with her teacher, because it was bothering her. Her teacher would scold her a lot, and it really bothered her. It's like, oh, my teacher's so angry. She's always criticizing. Oh, what kind of Dharma practitioner is she being so angry and criticizing? And then one day she was talking to her teacher, just working something out, and a phone call came in. And they've been just talking fine. A phone call came in. Her teacher was on it and started scolding the disciple on the other end, for doing whatever, put the phone down, and then turned back to my friend, and the anger was totally gone. And my friend realized, oh, this is how she was training her disciples. The teacher wasn't angry. The teacher didn't have it out to get you and scold you. This was the way the teacher was training the disciples and the way she needed to speak to get through to people at that time. Okay? So then you begin to see things in that way. Okay? Then in terms of action, they talk about three things to do. One is to make material offerings. Yeah? To our spiritual mentors. Second is to offer our service and to do things that help them and that help them complete their virtuous projects, because usually our teachers have many virtuous projects. And the third is the offering of our practice. So offering material, offering service, and offering practice. And our offering of practice is the best kind of offering. Yeah, by really taking the teachings to heart. Yeah. So being the disciple of a teacher does not mean you become a groupie. Yeah, and just kind of trot around like puppy dogs after the teacher going, he's a Buddha, he's a Buddha. You know, it really means transforming your mind. Okay? Another thing, like I was saying, that some, my original teachers then sent me to study with other teachers. It happens sometimes your preceptor ordains you and then sends you to live in a monastery somewhere else with a teacher there, and then that teacher becomes one of your teachers and guides you in learning the Vinaya and learning the Dharma. Yeah? So you don't have ordination here or have somebody else as your teacher here and then go to a different community with a different teacher, and that teacher says, you wake up at 5 in the morning, and you say, oh, well, but my teacher says you can wake up at 6 in the morning. I don't want to wake up at 5. My teacher said you can wake up at 6. You don't do that, okay? Because it just creates chaos in a community. If everybody comes in and says, but I was taught, that, it was okay to grow my hair out this much, and you're telling me to shave my hair after this much. And, I want to follow my teacher. I don't want to follow you. That doesn't work, okay? So you have to have a mind that is, receptive to doing things the way that particular community does things, knowing that most of it is just form. And a lot of our objections is just that it's a different way of doing things than we're used to. There's no difference in meaning. Yeah. Okay. Then your question about what to, tell people. If you're planning on ordaining, do you, put it on the front page of the local newspaper and let everybody know that that's what you're going to do? I wouldn't advise that. Okay? You have to tell the people who need to know. Okay? It's important when you talk to your family, I am still your son or daughter. You don't say, I'm still your husband. Clearly that relationship has to end. Okay? And I think with parents especially, it's, and with family in general, it's very good to say, I'm choosing this path because you brought me up very well. Yeah? And this is really true. I mean, why do we have minds inclined towards virtue? Because our parents taught us well. Our parents instilled some kind of ethical conduct in us when we were little. And they taught us how to get along with people. And they taught us that we can't be a brat and sit in the middle of the room and bang on the pots and scream until we get what we want. Our parents taught us well. And so we're not rejecting our parents, we're building on what they taught us. We're building on, how good of parents they were to us. And I think that's important to express it that way to our parents. Okay, our parents did all sorts of other things, as has come out in some of our discussions, But that's okay. I mean, our parents aren't Buddhas. Nobody's asking them to be. They were doing the best they could, given their own mental states and given all their conditioning. Yeah, we have to accept them for that. They really did the best they could. And they didn't get any, special ed classes on how to be a parent. Yeah? I mean, we popped out and our first words were not thank you. Our first words were, and they took care of us. Yeah, for how many years? And so when you tell your family and your parents to really express that gratitude, yeah, that it's really because of everything good you taught me when I was little, that now I want to go in this direction in my life. So I'm not rejecting anything. You don't need to say, well, I'm renouncing family life and I'm not going to have any kids and I don't like this, capitalist blah blah and and go through all that. That's not what you need to say to your parents at that time. Yeah, you really need to say thank you for everything you've done. And so you tell the people who need to know. You don't need to talk about it incessantly, constantly with them. You tell them because they need to know, and then you keep going on and living your life and making your preparations and do things. At work, I would say maybe let people, give notice at work and then let people know. Yeah. If you go in before you give notice, then your boss is going to be really uncomfortable. Like, are you going to split tomorrow and then I won't have this employee that I need? So, you wait until you're ready and you give notice with as much time as is required according to your job. And then you tell people at that time, what you're doing. And if they want to ask questions, they can. That makes some sense? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also through all these, and all the Buddhist rejoicing, I wrote you about it.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote back saying, that's very nice and that other people feel karma. Nothing to do with you. They focus on your practice. It was so helpful to that. I was like, I'm doing this thing. People are rejoicing.
How great I am.
Look how relaxed I am.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and you don't have to, you say, see all your old friends, explain to all of them in detail what happened, why you're doing it, answer their 5,003 questions, 2,000 of which are the same, each person you talk to, it just, you do what you need to do and go. Yeah. And again, forget about making everybody happy. That's number one. Forget about pleasing ordinary sentient beings. It will never happen. And if you ever doubt that, read chapter 8 of Shantideva. Because he talks about it very explicitly there. How it's impossible to please ordinary sentient beings. And your whole life can be consumed trying to do it. Okay. Other questions? Maybe you should. Oh, yeah.
I had a question also in response to your first question today about discussion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A couple did come to mind. Is the first one is kind of like maybe the most challenging aspect for people of monastic life, or maybe for us, like what we would envision, and maybe but for the monastics, how they've dealt with that, how it's been resolved, or maybe what remains unresolved. And then that there's two kind of follow-up ones, and that kind of leads to, I had mentioned to you the other day that Venerable Tarpa had talked about you in your life kind of guarding your mind stream, and maybe talking about that a little bit, because I know that it's different than the way that I've heard in the past, which is like guarding the mind stream of not like letting the sensory, the sense contact constantly be bombarded. And of course that applies to like the media and stuff, but also like even out in nature and stuff like that. But I think that when Venerable Charter was talking about that with you, it was probably in an even broader and deeper level. So I'd be interested maybe in hearing about that. And that kind of ties to the first question because, when you talk about, well, this is a challenging aspect, this has been resolved, this was a benefit, and this hasn't been resolved, like, to what extent is that actually negative on your mind stream, talking about those things that maybe aren't resolved? I mean, part of it's transparency, turn over into, so, and then, yeah.
Okay. So what was the context of what you were saying, so I'll know how to address it?
Times where you are so careful about where you put yourself, even in situations that to me in my life would be very normal, even after 30, 35 years of ordination. The other is about what you expose yourself to in terms of community. I get the sense sometimes that one reason maybe why you have always met fantastic teachers is because you didn't put wrong ideas in your head. You're careful. I find you to be careful about what you expose yourself to, not because you're closed-minded, but because you're aware of karmic possibilities.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I do try and be careful because of the conditioning, Yeah. What did I say? Oh, Teresa. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good story. So being very careful about the situations we put ourselves in, because those situations can help karma ripen. Yeah. So if we put ourselves in certain situations, it's so easy for negative karma to ripen. In other situations, it's easier for positive karma to ripen. Okay, and so what really taught me this was I first met the Dharma in Los Angeles, and went to a retreat there, and I sat next to a young woman named Teresa who had been to Kopan before, and so when I decided I was going to go there, then she said, okay, we'll meet at Kopan in Nepal, and then I'll take you out for chocolate cake in Freak Street. That's where I used to hang out in Nepal. Yeah, and so great. So we stayed in touch a little bit before, because that was the summer, and then I left for Kopan, and I got to Kopan, and everybody's expecting Teresa to come, and we're waiting and waiting and waiting for Teresa to come, and because she had been there before, and she's not showing up, and we're getting rather concerned about what happened. And then later we find out that this was in 1975, and it actually was in Newsweek or some magazine like that. There was one Frenchman who was meeting women in Thailand and murdering them. And what happened is Teresa stopped in Thailand on the way to Nepal. She went to a party. So this is the first thing. I wouldn't go to a party. If I was, going to a Dharma course or I'm intent on ordination, I wouldn't go to a party, Anyway, she went to a party. She met a guy, very nice, very charming. He asked her out to eat. Yeah, she went out to eat with him. And then they found her body in the Bangkok canals. He poisoned her. And that was this guy who was a serial murderer. And it really made me stop and think, if she didn't go to that party wanting to have a good time, she wouldn't have met the guy. If she wasn't, her mind was like, oh, what a nice guy, and attracted, and attachment came up. If that hadn't happened, she wouldn't have gone out to lunch with him. Yeah. And so just how, what the situations we put ourselves into can lead to karma ripening. Mm-hmm.
If that karma is supposed to ripen, how if it doesn't happen then it would happen another time?
There's that karma, yes, it's not going to go away, but let's say she didn't go to that party, she didn't meet that guy, she went to Kopan, she did the Kopan course, did a lot of purification during the Kopan course, created a lot of merit, maybe went and did Vajrasattva retreat, as Lama often had us do after the course. Then, that karma is there, but now it can't ripen in such a harsh way. Maybe it'll ripen in her getting sick. Or maybe it'll ripen in her falling down and hurting her leg or something like that. But it wouldn't ripen in her being murdered. Or, if you purify, then that karma may not ripen for a long time in the future, which gives you more time to do more purification, more creation of merit. Yeah? So, within karma is not cast in concrete. It isn't, I hit you and you hit me. It's like we plant seeds, but then so many other things need to come together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the best, to purify it completely, then you realize emptiness directly. That's the total purification. Okay? Until that point, we're always reducing its ability to ripen, or putting it off, or putting off the intensity, or whatever it is. Yeah? But really getting rid of it completely from the mind stream is when we realize emptiness. But if you do a lot of strong purification, which I think is really good to do at the beginning, then it I think helps a lot to eliminate obstacles later on. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so being careful about what we expose ourselves to, who we hang out with, what we watch, the movies and stuff like that. Yeah.
And like questioning things, like questioning tenets and cosmology and all that stuff. If that goes on forever, obviously it's not letting the teachings fully ripen in you. And so I guess that's another aspect of the question is how, like that line between where it's productive to question and where at some point.
Oh, okay. So there's different kinds of questioning. Okay? The Buddha really encouraged us to question, but there's different kinds of questioning. There's the kind of questioning where you really want to understand, you want to get to the meaning of what does this really mean and what is really true. And you want to keep investigating and analyzing, when we're trying to develop the correct view of emptiness. That involves a lot of questioning and analysis and investigation. And that we're really encouraged to do, okay? What gets in our way is when we have this kind of cynical mind that says, make me believe. Yeah. I don't believe in rebirth. You make me believe. It's your responsibility. Yeah. Give me the correct argument. Meanwhile, everything you say, I'm going to criticize without even thinking about it. That is not productive. Yeah. That's not helpful at all. Yeah. But discussion and questioning, I think, is really good. Mm-hmm.
What are signs for you that you're progressing along the path?
signs for me that I'm progressing is I don't get as mad as often and as intensely as I used to. Okay? I don't get depressed, like before. I'm able to weather some situations better than I was able to weather them before. I have more patience or kindness or tolerance or compassion with people. That's not saying I have all those qualities perfect A number 1, but it's better than before. Okay? So if it's better than before, that's good enough. Yeah? If I was becoming, more angry, yeah, then, okay, what's going on. But, yeah? So, His Holiness always says, don't compare yourself to the way you were a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago. Look at how were you a year ago? How were you 2 years ago? How were you 5 years ago? Okay? So think of the kind of person you were 5 years ago. What were you doing? Okay. So 2009. Yeah. What was going on in your life? How were you dealing with what was going on in your life? Yeah. You've changed, huh? Have you changed since then? Yeah. You've changed. You've learned some Dharma. You've put it into practice. You're a better person than you were then. So good enough. Yeah? Okay. Should I take out your list? Where did it go?
Oh my, no, I can.
Oh,
that list. I can tell you what.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
You had mentioned in one of the early discussion groups that that one of the challenges for you was bringing an Eastern religion into the West, and how to do that and making it adaptable but not losing too much. And I just was wondering about that and what were the aspects of that.
Okay. Because, for most Tibetans, culture and Buddhism are completely mixed. Also for our teachers, the culture and the Dharma are totally mixed. And, it's very interesting because Tibet was never occupied by a foreign power, so they never adopted Western education. So there was never a university where they taught anthropology, psychology, sociology, historical analysis. All these kinds of ways that we use to understand our world, they were never exposed to. So any idea of historical analysis, there's nothing. China is wrong, that's it. It all happened because of China. Yeah? There's no idea of, this is culture and this is religion and how they interplay. They don't think about it. It never was in Tibet. Okay? So, for me, I went in just completely, I didn't know anything. And so I would just try to copy everything I saw. And like I told you, I tried to be a good Tibetan nun. Very meek, very sweet, very shy. I have a big mouth. I say what I think. I question. Yeah? So I had to really deal with, this is Tibetan culture. But there's nothing in Buddhism that says you have to cover your head. Because in Dharamsala, if you blow your nose, you cover your head. Yeah. Well, actually, it's a more difficult process. You have to go like this. Okay. Blow your nose, because it's rude to blow your nose without covering, and then go like this, and then like this. And by that time, if you have a cold, you have to blow your nose again. Yeah. So I had to, really see, what is culture? What is religion? Yes, I try and be respectful if something is rude in Tibetan manners, I try to be respectful of it. But certain things, I had bad allergies at that time, and I couldn't do that. And I like to ask questions. So I did that. And actually, my teachers were fine with me asking questions. They were perfectly okay with it. I had just kind of mastered Tibetan way of doing things where you sit down for hour after hour after hour, because they serve the meals in the meditation hall, everything, you have to learn to sit for hours. Then I went to Taiwan to take Bhikshuni ordination. There you stand for hour after hour after hour. And my legs swelled up. It was hard to get my shoes on. I was wearing Tibetan robes. This arm has to be open, even it's freezing cold weather and it's hailing. When you're with your teacher, this arm is open. I go to Taiwan. You're not supposed to show anything. I'm wearing Taiwanese robes. So you have one thing, then another thing, then another. There were like 3 or 4 layers. I was sweating gallons. Had to stand up all this time. I had just learned some Tibetan prayers, then I go there, and now everything's in Chinese. And it was actually a very good experience, because I had to ask myself, what is Buddhism and what is culture? Because clearly, I was in a Buddhist community in both places, and I was learning the Dharma in both places. But the outside was totally different. Yeah? So what is Buddhism and what is culture? So I spent a good deal of time, especially when they were chanting chants I didn't know, or, whatever was going on I didn't understand, thinking about this during that month. So very, very helpful, and really helped me gain some clarity on it. So for example, that's why we do as many of our prayers and things as we possibly can here in English. Yeah? Because, the Buddha didn't speak Tibetan. Yeah? The Tibetans always say it's a blessed language, Buddha didn't speak Tibetan. Yes, there's a lot of incredible prayers in Tibet, for sure. But I think it's more important that we understand what we're saying rather than we learn to sing la 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 la. It's lovely. I've learned enough Tibetan. I can kind of, some pujas, I know what's going on. But it's very different when I can say it in my own language and understand it directly. I love the Tibetan melodies, and they're very inspiring. But I don't necessarily come through with the meaning. Yeah? So let's develop these kind of things in our own language, in our own way, so that we can be inspired and also understand the meaning. Okay, so things like that. Yeah, yeah. Tibetans serve tea in the middle of pujas. Yeah, we don't. Yeah, why? Because the carpet would be a disaster. And not only would the carpet be a disaster, I think it really disturbs your mental state when somebody's coming through and serving tea, and you have to pull out your bowl, and then you're looking, where are they, and when are they coming to me, and is it sweet tea, is it buttered tea, I find it very disturbing when I'm trying to really focus on the meaning of a puja. So, so we don't do that. So things like that. Okay? Yeah. Accused of cultural inappropriation or
appropriation, so like taking things and
oh, and
like translating it without really because basically if you're not Tibetan, that's not really a culture.
Oh, okay. Well, His Holiness has always said, he kind of teases Westerners who try to be Tibetans. And he says, you can put on all the Tibetan clothes, all you want, but you still have a big Western nose. Tibetan tea, drinking Tibetan tea won't make that go. But, he says it in such a sweet way. But he's really encouraging us, this is your culture. Becoming Tibetan has nothing to do with integrating Buddhism in your heart. Yeah? So he's even said, like, instead of, like the dorji, the bell and the drum, the hand drum, those we should use because those have specific meanings in tantric practice. But other than that, we don't need the long horns and the galing and things like that. He said you can use a guitar or piano, for music offerings. Yeah? Which makes a lot of sense to me. For tormas, we don't need to use sampa. We can use cookies. We can use canned fruit. So just adopt it. Because I look at some of the tormas, and it's like, I like to offer to the Buddha food that I think is delicious. Yeah? So some of the stuff that they offer is not what I consider delicious. I want to, I should offer to the Buddha something good. Yeah? Like chocolate chip cookies. I think that's got to be the Buddha's favorite. Because there's some heart in it when I give chocolate chip cookies. If I give, sampa, it's like there. I like sampa. I'll eat it when I'm in Tibet. There's nothing else to eat. It's fine. But, it's... Well, they usually don't put sugar in the tormas. They put lots of butter. Yeah, sampa and butter. My arteries hurt just looking at it. Sampa with sugar, I can manage. But I am not a high-fat person. Yeah, and Tibetan tea I find ghastly. Ghastly, and it's so unhealthy. Okay. Okay. Anything else? Oh, I don't have a clock today. We'll go on and on.
Real quick, for like a discussion, I thought of it, and it kind of seems to be something I've heard. It kind of ties to what interval time we were talking about, maybe Victoria. Just like faith and trust in general. So I think they have a very different meaning in Western religion in general than Buddhist and maybe like Eastern.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Do you want me to talk on that now?
You can, or I think it would be a very good, good discussion because I think I would enjoy hearing, what the monastics have to say as far as, the level of faith they came in with versus, analytical, like, experiential, like, knowledge.
Yeah. Well, let me address a little bit of that right now. The word, the Tibetan word that is translated as faith, okay, there's three kinds of it. And faith is not a very good translation for that word. When you look at what the three kinds are, okay, so one kind of faith or trust or confidence, however you want to do it, involves admiring let's say, the good qualities of the three jewels. Okay, so recognizing the three jewels' qualities and admiring them and saying, wow, those are wonderful qualities. I really respect those qualities. Okay? So already from that you have to have some knowledge. Okay? Then the second one is aspiring faith or confidence or trust or whatever. And that's where you aspire to practice and gain those qualities yourself. Okay, so again, you have to know a little bit about where you're going and, some idea that maybe there's a path to get there. Yeah. And then the third kind is based on conviction. And that's when you've really learned something and studied it and thought about it And because you have an understanding of it, then your faith, trust, confidence really increases, because there's understanding. You're convinced. Okay, so when you think about that, something that involves conviction, the Western word faith just doesn't seem to match very well at all, because we say the word faith, and what do we think of? Blind faith. Yeah. Somebody else said it, I shut up and believe. Yeah. But that attitude, while people in Asia and Westerners have that attitude, that is not what the Buddha taught. Okay? The Buddha really taught us to learn and so on. But because Buddhism is a widespread, faith, and there's many people, especially if you think in a society where most people were not literate, okay, then you're going to have a lot of blind faith. Yeah, because what they learn is limited. What they learn, it will often be based on stories, stories to illustrate a point. Because the teachings, the whole vocabulary for teachings is often too difficult for people. Yeah? So then they're taught things by means of stories. And, they gain some information, some knowledge. They see everybody else in their family having faith and offering water bowls and doing things, so they do it because that's what everybody does. But it was in a society, a culture where you don't have literacy and people are not well educated and so on. What I find so interesting is when I find that in Westerners, and there it's the usual thing of, oh, you're a Tibetan monk, you must be Buddha. Or you're Tibetan, you must be Buddha. And that kind of blind faith that way, without understanding somebody's qualities or understanding the Dharma. And you find it in Westerners too, just, idealizing somebody without any real intent to learn. And so, you see different teachers teaching different kinds of people according to the disciples' mentality. Yeah? So if you have people with a lot of that kind of faith, you teach them the Dharma, but you also have them do a lot of projects to create merit, and you do a lot of rituals and a lot of building statues and stuff like that, because that's what's suitable for those people. Okay, so it's going to vary. Mm-hmm.
Not every other sentence, but it was very, you gotta have faith in that.
Right. Yeah. But remember, faith for her doesn't mean blind faith. Yeah. It means understanding. And often when she said pray, she meant practice. Yeah. And so that kind of advice, if you wake up in the morning and you think of the qualities of the triple gem, and you link the purpose of your life to the triple gem, to me that's a beautiful practice. And that's different than waking up in the morning and I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Buddha, Dharma, Buddha, Sangha. Where's my coffee? Yeah. Okay. I think also that the thing about faith is, or maybe I should say trust or confidence. Okay. The thing about it is that it softens your mind. Yeah. And we need to learn how to be very skillful in our practice. If our mind is too soft or devotional, then we lose the analytical ability that is very important. But if we go too much towards analysis and just always that, then something can get a little bit hard in our mind too. So they say that confidence and learning, you do them in a mutually complementary way. Because the more you learn, the more you understand, the more confidence you have. The more confidence you have in the teachings and in the three gems, the more you're going to listen to the teachings. When you listen to the teachings and think about them, then the more conviction you're going to have. The more conviction you have, then the more confidence you're going to have. More confidence, it softens your mind to listen and think, and then, so you can see how those two things go back and forth. And I think that's very, very helpful to combine both in our practice. Yeah. And when your mind gets really kind of stuck and you don't understand anything and your mind's just kind of dry, then it can be very good to do some of the more quote, quote, devotional kinds of practices, and do prostrations, do purifications, do a visualization, and have the light come into you and purify whatever boredom, obstacle, whatever it is that's limiting you at that particular moment. Yeah? So you learn how to deal with your mind in that way. Yeah? When to use symbols, like happens, when you do the visualizations, and when to use reasoning, like, when you're investigating the meaning of a teaching. Okay, so you kind of use trial and error and learn how to do these things. Mm-hmm.
So do you sort of take the books and the teachings and think and analyze the books?
Mm-hmm.
And at other times, that doesn't seem to work, or you sort of run out of, studying energy.
Mm-hmm.
And automatically, it's not really a decision, or it wasn't for me, you just gravitate more towards doing things with objects. It sort of happens.
Yeah.
And at some point, you feel like, hey, it's time for thinking about something else.
Mm-hmm.
For me to evolve the
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's very helpful that way. Yeah. Mm. Okay. So I'm freed from the...
Freed. A new question has come up.
Oh, okay.
And then I don't have any more at all. Then Jampa mentioned the other day about that the Tibetans focus more on sutra than on the Nyaya, and that's what I've understood in the past is that the Tibetan people in general, that's a lot of the tantric practice is really incorporating daily life and spiritual life, and that's such a force behind this practice. And so I'm just wondering where are things lacking that the Sangha is needed? I know there are, and I mean I can think of two right off as, one, preserving the Dharma. There was another item I was thinking about, but just in general, since the Tibetan people appear to integrate practice into their everyday life, they live with so much bodhicitta because it's part of their culture. What's really lacking in that with the Sangha and the Vinaya, within that culture? Let's see.
First of all, the Tibetans are, as a culture, as a country, they're like everybody else. They're like everybody else. Not everybody is walking around with bodhicitta. Yeah, they hear teachings on bodhicitta. They'll say the prayers on bodhicitta. It's incredible when you go to a protest, a political protest in Dharamsala, they're singing the bodhicitta prayer, the dedication, may this precious bodhi mind not be born and arise and grow. That verse, they're chanting, at a protest against China. That's pretty strong, okay? But in their everyday dealings, they try and be kind, but everybody's an individual. And they are good horse traders. Yeah? True? Not true? Yeah? I mean, if they can get you to pay a little bit more when you're doing business, they'll do that. Yeah? And And if they can look out for their, there is incredible division in Tibetan society between the Kampas, the Amdowas, and the Sangpo, the Central Tibetans. There's a lot of competition, there's friction. Tibetan society is not unified. And this is the big danger when His Holiness isn't there. It's not a unified society. I mean, not that ours is. Yeah, America certainly isn't unified. But it's not like all the Tibetans are walking around and they're all practicing bodhicitta in their daily life. Yeah, just ordinary people. Yes, there's a remarkable number of Sangha and a remarkable number of highly realized people, more than in any other culture. Yeah. But even all the Sangha, a lot of them were put there when they were children. And some really adapt to the monastic life, and some are there simply because they're not sure what to do. Yeah. Don't make flowers out of Tibetan culture. It's not like that.
Yeah, there is a vision that there is less anger. I understand there's a high focus on the analytical sometimes, and the debating and all that, and less meditation, that type of thing. But in general, it does seem, and that's the vision, very superficial, that there is less depression, less anger, that people really are integrating.
It really depends on the person, It really does. One thing in Tibetan culture, that what you do is, if there's an authority figure, and this happens with His Holiness all the time, people say, yes, I'll do that. And then they go and do whatever they want. Yeah? And that's societally acceptable. Tibetan definition of lying is very different than our definition of lying. Yeah. So is Chinese definition of lying. Yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah. Chinese and Tibetan definition of lying. You want to do this, somebody's asking you what you're doing, and you don't say, I'm doing this, because you don't want to hurt their feelings, so you make up some other story about what you're doing. That is not considered lying. Yes, it's being considerate. It's not lying. Yeah. 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 And I noticed that when I went to Singapore, too, that often a question was not a question, it was a direction. Shall we cross to the other side of the street? And the person's already going there, and you better follow them. It wasn't a question of, do you want to cross the street? It was, come. Yeah? So, yeah. And also, another thing about Tibetan culture, I was talking with one Rinpoche that I knew since we were both very young, and we were talking about the difference between the cultures. How in the West, we take everything extremely literally. We are very literal. Yeah? So the teachings say, you've got to, offer 1 cup of milk. It's like we are 1 cup of milk and not 1 drop under, not one. They don't say that, but, we take everything very literally. Yeah, and want to do it exactly like that. The Tibetans don't. He explained to me that when somebody's way over here, yeah, with some view, you want to get to them to the center. What you do is not state what the center is. You state the total opposite extreme. And by that, you'll get them to where you want, you'll convey what you're really trying to say. And I said, but Westerners, if we're over here and you tell us this, we will take you literally. And we think we have to do exactly that, exactly as you said, with no ifs, ands, and buts. And that we have to go totally to that other extreme. And this is a big cultural difference. Yeah, because they're just trying to get us to the middle. we think we have to go over there. Then we get anxious. Oh, they told me to do this, and I can't do that, and I'm doing it wrong, and I'm not following the instructions. And whereas the Tibetans, it's like, okay, they said do this, I'll just kind of nudge myself a little way in this direction. Okay. Big cultural difference.